Okay.
Hang on, I'll call the lady. Hello. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to, it's not the report from Tiger Mountain, ladies. It's welcome to Cafe Lockdown, and hosted by me tonight, it looks like, because Michael and Damo are in a secret meeting of the Illuminati, getting their instructions for controlled opposition. No. They're at a secret party of many of the people who are there today, like Mr. Cossack and stuff, and they're an undisclosed location. And I am in communication with Mr. David Thrussell, who is also at an undisclosed location that way. David, say hello.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry, I had a name for tonight's show. If you wanted to run with it,
Yeah, what is it?
The No Goat Review -2.
-2. That's correct.
Yeah. Almost -3. I'm not trying to go Al Jolson on you, but for some reason I cannot get a camera image working.
David, in the name of diversity, he's blacked up, and it's so black.
I want full Justin Trudeau, okay? Full Justin Trudeau.
Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So this is it. We've completely taken over. Really, this is a coup, a military coup, because we figured, David and I figured, it was today Cafe Lockdown, tomorrow the world.
That's right. I thought we weren't going to admit that. You know,
why not? Let's lay our cards.
We've moved Damien and Michael on. And, you know, here we are in control.
We've moved them to Mickleham.
Hands at the panel, ready to go.
We moved them to Mickleham. We've got them there. So there it was. That's it. Full takeover.
What a week it's been.
What a week. And David in black. And we're just going to chat about this crazy week that's just occurred. So,
yes.
David,
I mean, let's have a recap, because as most people know, that horrendous bill, the permanent state of emergency bill, the instant dictatorship bill, just add water, you get instant authoritarian bill passed. I'll admit that even myself, and I'm normally reasonably chipper, I'm told, even I felt a little downtrodden there for a minute or two. You know, I was going to say to people, it's easy to take that as a rough blow. And it is a rough blow. There's no denying it. But I wanted to say to people that they really should remember, you know, don't forgive and don't forget. Yes. Don't forgive and don't forget. Remember who voted for that atrocity of a piece of legislation. And remember those who didn't vote for it.
Mr. Taxi got it there. Apparently, he received some kind of obviously each of the independents kind of represent different kind of, what you call special interest groups. Mr. Andy represents the Pets Animal Rights Party or whatever, and Fiona Patton represents the sex industry, and they seem to have been given some, basically, you can basically run a brothel anywhere now, and basically everything is going to be sexualized.
Well, the payoffs aren't subtle, are they? The payoffs weren't subtle. I mean, the way I'm reading the press, if I read the press correctly, Rod Barton, the Transport Matters guy, the taxi guy, the guy who represents the taxi industry.
Yeah. Can you tell us about him, David?
Well, I don't know much about him, except that he's a long-term, I believe, from what I read, he's a long-term lobbyist for the taxi industry. There's nothing wrong with that, I guess, but if I'm reading the press correctly, and they don't put 1 and 2 together, but if you do put 1 and 2 together, it looks like they bought him off to the tune of $600 million.
I know. I mean, isn't that incredible, really? I mean, I heard 740 million. But think about that amount of money. I mean, obviously some of it might end up actually helping people who drive taxis, but I wonder how much is going to end up in the pockets of the various people, not only who work for this guy, but also the guy himself. I mean, it's just open corruption.
Absolutely. It's actually breathtaking, isn't it? It's breathtaking, And I mean, the other thing about that is it shows you how, it blows apart this whole mainstream media narrative around the pandemic bill. It blows it to pieces because they're throwing money. The government threw money left, right, and center. They threw their whatever exists of their morals, if they have any, they threw them under a bus for this sex bill, and they also threw extraordinary amounts of money at this obscure Rod Barton character to buy his vote. You know, so what this tells me, and I think it would tell lots of other people too, is this is malevolent. This bill is completely malevolent, and they have malevolent intent, and they have deep pockets to back up their malevolent intent. They've thrown, apparently, according to the press, $600 million at Rod Barton, and they've thrown this horrific sex bill at Fiona Patton. And I only know the briefest of details, but the details that I'm told about are absolutely horrific, you know?
It sounds like, things like enabling, like human trafficking in a sense, because, basically any home can be a brothel. I mean, what kind of idea is that? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, it's really crazy, and it seems that it'll be sort of open slather within the sex industry. They all claim it's to stop discrimination and stuff.
Well, isn't it ironic? I mean, how this is an incredibly unpalatable irony, I think. Out there in the real world, you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people who either have lost their jobs, they cannot put food on the table for themselves and their families, or you've got people who've taken a medical intervention which they really didn't want to take. They've been forced into this, and every time you want to enter a shop or some entertainment facility or some area for social engagement, you've got to display your medical status to enter public places. It's
well, this is what's incredible too, because it obviously
hang on, but yet I believe if I read that sex bill properly, prostitutes can work with STDs, syphilis, AIDS, whatever, and not reveal that information to their clients, because that would breach their medical privacy.
Correct. Yes, but at the same time, they're running a medical.
Richard, they're mocking us. They're mocking us with this.
Yeah, they are, David, and it's exactly the point too, that they're, at the same time that they're running a medical apartheid on basically what amounts to a bad flu, but then far more worse sex diseases are not even going to be disclosed, and people can just do it wherever the hell they like, out of their own homes, and obviously it's just going to.
There's a hint in there. There's a hint in there, right? That what that shows you very starkly, and I know most people watching know this already, but it shows you very, very starkly that this is not about a disease. This is not about a virus. This is not about an illness, okay? They're deep pockets. On the one hand, they're incredibly deep pockets with Rod Barton. I mean, $600 million friggin' dollars. Come on. And then on the other hand, this bizarre kind of hypocrisy around medical privacy and discrimination. I mean, you couldn't make it up. It's like someone dropped a Kurt Vonnegut book into the blender with a Philip K. Dick book and served up this sort of horrific puree of satire.
It does. Yeah, it feels a bit Kurt Vonnegut. It feels a bit G.J. Ballard as well. Like he always wrote about kind of, dystopias that are like 5 or 10 minutes into the future. We're certainly 5 or 10 minutes into the future now. And I mean, it really is extraordinary. I mean, again, it's the whole narrative too. And you'll notice, obviously, there's a lot of hype this week about the Omicron. It sounds like something, some kind of Comic Con, doesn't it? No, Omicron. And of course, this virus affects young children, of course, which of course will then push the jab for people under 10. They even want to talk about giving it to people who are under 5 now. So it's really quite extraordinary what's going on, David. Thoughts?
It's so transparent, isn't it? Look, honestly, my position is, and I'm being careful here, booted off, censored permanently, but my position is, in the broader sense, I don't believe a word of what they're saying about anything. And you know that. I don't, and I'm not going to go into detail, because I know God will be vanished forever, will be memory hold forever. But I personally don't believe one word of their narrative. Okay.
No.
I mean, I think I said last week, it's like a bad third sequel to the spin-off of the TV spin-off to the original sequel. Do you know what I mean? Like, it sounds
It sounds like a Doctor Who villain. Omicron, Doctor. You know what I mean? Like, it's completely crazy. And even some doctors coming out of South Africa, which is where it apparently they say that this is a much milder, whatever the hell it is, and that no one's really getting sick at all from this. You know what I mean? And in the sense, perhaps it should spread. I mean, that's what they say. But
they need a big scary word. they need a big scary word to their agenda, and it's not subtle. It's like the kindergarten narrative. This thing.
God, tell me he's gone. Hello, you're dropping
out. What have we got? Oh, let's pull out. Oh, I'm calling it con as like con. Like it's the con. They've pulled this out of their drawer of
Oh God, David, hello. Well, so this is going to be me talking for now.
Crappy through the mainstream media. This crazy.
David, you got a lot of dropouts, mate.
Have I cut?
Hello?
Okay. All right. I'm trying. I'm here.
I can hear you now. That's better. Hello?
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. It's not always easy being in
I know. Well,
location.
maybe it'll be a slightly shorter show if we can't get you back on. But so did you know see anything about today? It seemed to be another big day's demonstration. I heard that Michael and Damo were all over it. They were on the news and everything tonight. So it was good.
Oh, fantastic! Look, my favourite bit of today was a large crowd of people gathering outside the ABC headquarters, and I have to admit, I think that is the perfect destination. That is the perfect target for people's ire, for people's anger, and people's suspicion, and people's disbelief. Is the ABC. The ABC is the perfect destination for your skepticism and your anger and your disbelief.
Absolutely, and they are really obviously, along with I guess a show like The Project, or some of those mainstream Channel 9, Channel 7, they are the propagators of the story, and there's that great meme going around of a guy who's like an Amish guy who says, "Well, COVID, what? I don't have a television, so I don't know anything about this." You know what I mean? So there's an element of that, is that if you really were to switch off your television the past 2 years, you would not know anything about this.
Exactly, and there's also that extra layer of bitter irony, as in that the public funds the ABC, which then lies back to the public that funds it. I mean, absolutely, shameless lies come back at the public. From this institution that the public funds. That's a very bitter pill for a lot of people to swallow, and I think a lot of people are really starting to realize that the ABC is appalling, and it has lost the public trust completely, in my view, and that it works for an agenda which is, frankly, anti-human, and it's anti the public. They are not working in the public.
Oh yeah, they weren't. This is what's so strange too, because if you were to ask the ABC, obviously the ABC is meant to be left wing, and so is the Age and stuff, but they really no longer represent what you would call the working class. It's the same with their climate change.
Actually, they hate the working class. They hate working people. Last week's march was really heavily, and they all have been heavily populated by, decent, hardworking, average Australian families with their kids. The media paints them absolutely erroneously and libelously as extremists, but I was there. I've been there. It's highly populated with, decent, hardworking, angry Australian families, a lot of whom have lost work, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their livelihoods, or they feel that they've been coerced into things that they really don't want to do. There was a lot of, all sorts of people were there. There's a whole, and yet media institutions like the ABC feed back this repulsive, corrupt narrative to the public that it's a situation full of extremists and blah blah blah. Actually, that's not what I saw at all.
How's that fake story they had with that Real Rukshan had a photograph taken with what's the name of that guy? Is it Neil Ferguson or whatever, who is actually somebody who's a bit at least far right in some ways. But Real Rukshan doesn't have a choice who he gets photographed with. He must take. People come up to him every day. Thousands of people can get a photograph. But of course,
it's like shutting down the ABC because someone that they decided that they didn't like was listening.
Yeah, exactly.
In my view, it's basically equivalent. You can't control a lot of these things, you know. I mean, whoever, and I don't know anything about this guy and whatever. I have no idea, you know. But shall we shut down the ABC because some extremists were listening, you know, on Tuesday morning? Okay, let's give that a try.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. We should explain that tonight's Cafe Lockdown, that Michael Greg Griffiths and Damien Richardson are both in an undisclosed location having a big party. We can't say where. I don't even know myself. And that I'm talking to David Thrussell, who's himself at an undisclosed location, whose camera is not working, or that ASIO has decided we can't see his beautiful face this evening. So that's what's going on. You can see me with my Who Killed Epstein t-shirt, which is interesting. People have often commented this week on the Omicron variant happening at the same time as the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, obviously to take a lot of the media heat off it. What do you think of that, David?
Look, I mean, who knows? Look, I don't know. What I do know is we have these multiple layers of these basically conflicting or distracting narratives thrown at us. From what I know, as someone who's taken an interest in these matters for a long time, that's a classic sign of A, an intelligence operation, and B, disinformation. So you're going to have all these conflicting or confusing or distracting narratives all thrown at you at the same time, which creates a sort of blizzard that's very hard to decipher. So in that blizzard, there'll be some truth, there'll be some half truth, there'll be things which are generated just to confuse you or distract you. But the overall idea of that blizzard is to absolutely confuse the hell out of you, you know? And this is actually what's been happening through the media for quite a few years now. I mean, I feel like, honestly, since Trump defeated Clinton, it's the mainstream media has just been this blizzard of absolutely disorientating chaos, you know, and it's always been like that to a degree. Absolutely, I know
it has always been.
Yes, but now it's gone up to it's gone up to high gear. They've turned the octane on. They've gone into turbo mode, and so you get assaulted by this blizzard of narratives, some of which are true, as I said, some of which are half true, some of which are completely false. Who knows? For some of them, I have no idea, you know. But and I think it's designed. This is a classic thing that happens in intelligence operations, because in intelligence operations,
So you mentioned intelligence operation, and then his audio cuts out, ladies and gentlemen. I think definitely we'd like to welcome ASIO to tonight's Cafe Lockdown.
I'm sure they're here already. Don't worry.
Whenever you mention anything to do with intelligence agencies, you drop out.
Well, that's an odd thing, isn't it?
Very strange.
Yes. As someone's pointing out, of course, and a lot of people have noticed this, but I think we should just say it out loud. So this Omicron variant, Omicron is an anagram of moronic, as many people have pointed out. I suspect that that's not a coincidence. I think that yet again, that is us being.
Yeah, and the other thing too, of interest is Delta Omicron spells media control. That's an anagram of that. Have you heard that one, David?
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't think these are coincidences. I think that the puppet masters are they're trolling us. They've actually been trolling us for decades.
They're having a troll.
In a way, they're the original trolls.
Well, I think it's got something to do with the fact that when when you're wielding this level of power, David, that they kind of get off on it. You know what I mean? All people who are powerful get off on the power trip. So you have to kind of, in a way, let the subjects know who the slave master is, so to speak. You know, what do you think of that?
Absolutely, yes. And I think that's an excellent point. And I think I wanted to relate that to your T-shirt, actually, your Who Killed Epstein T-shirt, which is an excellent T-shirt. So think about this Epstein situation, and we could go on about it for hours, but let's not. But I've seen photos that allegedly of a painting that was in Epstein's drawing room or living room or some part of his very expensive, I think it was $77 million worth of apartment, his brownstone in New York City. And this painting that hung on Epstein's wall, apparently, was this bizarre. Well, there was a couple of them, obviously, wasn't there? But one of them was this picture, this painting of George W. Bush sitting on the ground with paper paint, like a small child, with this sort of collapsed. What are those wooden building blocks called? I can't remember what
they're called Jenga.
Yeah, with that, a bit like, and it was obviously made two towers at some point. You know, that thing, and you know, I mean, what are they doing? They're mocking us there. They're mocking us. You know.
Yeah, that's,
you know. And then there was the other painting in his house of Bill Clinton wearing the infamous blue.
Yeah. David, are you there?
You know, yeah, they're absolutely mocking us. They're absolutely mocking us, and they're trying to mock us, and show us where power resides. And I think at the end of the day,
David, hang on a second. Just let me comment on this. Isn't it interesting? Because one of the things I always talk about in the Epstein case is they always go on about Prince Andrew. It's like, this whole thing is he was meant to have like 100 or 1,000 celebrity customers, but the only one you ever hear about is generally. Sometimes Bill Clinton gets mentioned, and of course Prince Andrew. And isn't it interesting too? But I mean, why were they doing this to them? Why were they doing this and filming them? I mean, the whole point is this is a blackmail operation done by a foreign intelligence agency, which, due to Ghislaine Maxwell's involvement, was probably the Mossad. Thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, that would be the obvious conclusion, wouldn't it? I mean, what I would argue is that on one level that would probably be correct, but on another level, I think, you know, within these intelligence operations and agencies probably operates another layer, another sort of strata of people and groups who use those, you know, those agencies as a front, and that strata probably crosses between multiple intelligence agencies, because if you ever observe what they do, they behave in a coordinated fashion. So it's not like the agencies themselves are, I would suggest, they're not sentient, but actually there is a strata of people involved across those agencies.
Kind of a nexus of intelligence communities is what you're trying to say. Is that right? A global a nexus of intelligence communities. And obviously, when we speak about things like the CIA, Mossad, ASIO, things like this, obviously it wouldn't be everybody. It would be like I guess you would call it the black ops department of these particular bodies.
Look, I doubt its reception. The people making the coffee, you know. But I think behind there's going to be a strata of people who work internationally, and frankly, they don't appear to have our best interests at heart, you know. And I'm going to just say that I think this present situation has all the hallmarks of an intelligence operation.
Absolutely. I wanted to raise another point too, because obviously when it's talking about the globalist or the global agenda, we often have its kind of problem, reaction, solution is a kind of what people talk about. But, you know, obviously there's the problem. But I always think that it's like the overreaction too. Like there seems to be always a small problem, and then it's like a massive overreaction, or like a reaction that's deliberately like not going to work. I mean, if I was to use, say, for example, I mean, the war on drugs, for example, I mean, you know, is a kind of globalist agenda. It's like, you know, like how long have we had the war on drugs? Since President Nixon, right? So it doesn't work. Has anyone been able to stop? Have they been able to stop people using drugs for the last 50 years? No. There's more drugs than ever everywhere. So it doesn't work.
I think it's designed to not work. I think it's designed to not work.
Designed to not work is what I'm talking about. Like that's the deliberate, you know, when you have the problem, then there's the overreaction, and then the solution doesn't work, and it actually keeps the problem going. And that's what you're seeing with COVID. You're seeing COVID continuing, right? And like the war on terror. Did anything they do, invading Afghanistan, Iraq, did that stop terrorism? No. It kept going and going and going. So this is what I'm talking about. I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Oh, look. I absolutely see what you're talking about, and I agree. I mean, all these wars on this, you know, war on drugs, war on terror, war on a supposed virus. You're absolutely right. They're all designed to fail, quote unquote, because the failure is the thing that brings in the policy that they want.
The cycle. The more, furthermore,
you know, I mean, this is why, demonstrations, protests like today are so important. They're not the be-all and end-all. They're not the magic bullet. They're not the magic carpet, but basically anything constructive that people can do, they should do, because we must resist this thing in every way possible. If we just lay down, and give up, they will continue to steamroll over us. So we must resist in any way that we can. That is, So, and I mean, look, people. I'm not going to suggest all sorts of ideas on the air.
And you hear about George Christensen? He suggested civil disobedience, and he's obviously a member of Parliament. He seems really quite solid, that guy, and he's great. And obviously, there are other Craig Kelly, and there are other members of Parliament, and Catherine Cumming, who we had lunch with her at your state about 10 days ago now, 8 days ago. So that was great, wasn't it?
Yes. I mean, look. There are people involved in the resistance, of course, and we should be glad of that. And we should congratulate them. What we need is a critical mass, and I actually think we already have that critical mass. But the media and social media, one of their primary purposes is to divide people. So when, for example, when last week when there was we were there. I mean, there was hundreds of thousands of people on the streets of Melbourne, hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I've seen the number 700,000. I've seen 1 million. I have no idea.
I think 700 is a fairly good estimate. That would be my guess. Yeah,
it was absolutely enormous. What that tells you is, because let's pluck out a number. Only 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 people who are actually opposed to this thing might actually take to the streets. Maybe 1 in 5. Who knows? But a percentage. What that tells you, there's an enormous backlash against all this insanity. Okay, but
it's always described
is to divide that and nullify it.
David, just let me say something. It's always described as anti-vaxxers or whatever. But obviously this is people who, some people may have had the vaccine, but they don't agree with the the apartheid situation that we're living in. Obviously in Victoria, it's meant to end in New South Wales soon, and there is some talk that Daniel Andrews might drop it. Did you see that reported in the newspaper?
I don't believe anything any of these snakes ever say.
Well, they might drop it for Christmas, but that with his new powers, he's going to bring it back in some form because of Omicron.
Well, why wouldn't he? What's there to stop him? Now he has this blank check for totalitarianism. I mean, it's a nightmare. Frankly, it's a nightmare. That bill is an absolute nightmare. And
they watered it down a bit, didn't they? Did you see any of them?
Well, yes, but not much. And the problem with that is, once the bill exists and is enshrined as law, they can modify it to their heart's content, and they will. Once that platform is there, they can tinker away and do whatever they like, So it's a nightmare. Yeah, it's a nightmare, and I'm not going to deny that it is that. I mean, we just, as the mass of humanity, we just have to dust ourselves off and stay on the march, I'm afraid. We can't let it debilitate us. We can't let it demoralize us, even though it's a blow. But we've got to be in this for the long haul. We've got to dust ourselves off and be in this for the long haul.
Have you ever noticed that the people who seem to really like to enforce this kind of thing, they're the people who are, I guess, a little bit maybe quiet before? They're like the quiet, they're the quiet, obedient ones. You know what I mean? And
yes. Well, I did watch a bit of this Parliament during the week. I watched half an hour or something like this, because I was on a bit of on edge. Hoping that through some miracle that horrendous bill wouldn't pass, And I noticed that the new Victorian Attorney General, who I took an instant dislike to, she struck me as this perfect example of these sort of bourgeois totalitarian bureaucrats. These people who are convinced through the propaganda, through the ABC and the Age and the Guardian and all the rest of it. They're convinced somehow that they're not totalitarians, which in itself is breathtaking, but they're also massively rewarded for carrying out these malevolent schemes, And so I found her incredibly unappealing and unimpressive as a person. And she was sort of the darkest kind of Machiavellian sort of puppet who had this kind of mug attitude.
you're still talking at at what I call a macro level, a level of government. I'm talking about at a micro level because, you notice you go into different shops and some people are like demanding papers and some people are kind of like, okay about it. They don't ask or whatever. Obviously a lot of restaurants, I think, are trying to enforce it because I think they're the ones who are being monitored. But like if you go into various other kinds of shops, be it a record store, a bookstore, or, leisure, maybe a clothing store or something, some people are strict about it and some aren't. And it's very strange. And it often comes from people who you can tell have been quiet before. Maybe they've been bullied in the past in life, and that now this is their chance because they've gone along with this agenda, and now is their chance to bully back. You know what I mean? And to make sure everybody, is hassled with this bullshit every 5 seconds. What are your thoughts on that at a micro level?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the sort of key planks of totalitarianism, isn't it? It weaponizes petty bureaucrats and operatives, and it's their moment in the sun. It's their moment where they can extract all their revenge, and they're weaponized. Absolutely.
They're that French word resentiment. You know what I mean? Like resentment is a big idea in French philosophy. And I think you see that. You see people have a lot of pent up anger because we have a terribly repressive society. They have a lot of, they just feel shat upon in life, and that this is their opportunity to really let that out and to enforce a kind of like the mini police states in their little store or in their little wherever. What do you know? I mean,
well, these are innately powerless people, and I don't mean on the macro level. I don't mean that people who aren't connected to the levers of power and blah blah, because most of us aren't. I mean, internally, they're powerless. Internally, they don't have internal strength. They don't have some small amount of faith in themselves or some small amount of gumption or determination. These are really powerless people who who've been leveraged, who've been given the opportunity to inflict the most sort of ugly power on people outside of them. It's a very ugly thing to witness, isn't it?
It's petty misery, you know what I mean? And two, I mean, it should also, and I mean, I think this is one of the reasons you're seeing a lot of people who are vaccinated at these protests and things, because, I mean, it's a hassle for people who are vaccinated everywhere you go. You've got a bing, 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 you know what I mean? Like,
well, come on. I mean, let's boil it down to the basics. I think it's really important to boil this stuff because, as we said earlier on, there's so much mist, there's so much fog, there's so much confusion. I think a lot of it deliberate. But let's boil it down to the absolute basics, okay? You need to, in this state right now, in a supposed liberal Western democracy, the government is demanding of you that you have a medical procedure so that you can hold down a job, so that you can feed yourself and your family. I mean, that's repulsive. It's beggars belief. They didn't do that in the Soviet Union, for crying out loud. Okay. True. Now the other one is, as you've just been remarking, you need to enter any kind of shop or any sort of public place. To go buy some food at a shop or enter any public place. You need to get the government's permission to do that. You need to interact with a piece of software that transmits your information to the government, and then the government gives you permission to enter that establishment. It's unthinkable. What have we done? What have we allowed to happen?
This is why I bring up someone like G.J. Ballard, who always wrote about kind of dystopias that are like, vaguely science fiction, but it's always very close to the future. It's very much like now, but it's a kind of nightmare. And something has gone terribly wrong, and people are sliding into a kind of, whether it be a totalitarian situation or kind of dystopian nightmare. And I really think that's where we are, David.
Yes, absolutely. And it's come. I mean, as you know, I've felt for a long time that we were slowly marching towards totalitarianism, and I was very uncomfortable about it. And I've written countless songs about it and so forth and so on. But even I'm surprised at how quickly, actually the term to use is shock and awe. They've done this deliberately. It's designed. They have a schedule. It's all deliberate. They've hit us with shock and awe. They brought in this vaccine mandate like a military operation. It was like them bombing Baghdad. It was shock and awe. It came down. It was within a week or two. They just announced this thing, and then you couldn't hold down a job without with the government decreed.
Yes.
It's like Ming the Merciless or something. You know, the government decreed that you had to have a medical intervention to hold down a job. It's unthinkable. It tells you, well, it tells me that every layer of our supposed governments and our media and our political class is absolutely corrupt, because there is no way that something as repulsive as that could stand without the most incredible kind of corruption.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because all these agendas, and again, we can go through a couple of them, they're kind of like, they started off as kind of like wars on certain groups of people. If you look at, say, the war on drugs, that's a war on people who have problems with addiction, right? You know, it's not solving it. It's a war upon people, you know, who have problems. Rather than it being a health issue, which is what the issue of drugs should be, they're basically attacking people who are suffering. And then if you look at, say, the situation with the war on terror, they're attacking basically Islamic people, you know what I mean, Muslim people. That's what that's about. I mean, and it was all about creating fear within the minds of Western people to fear Muslims. And obviously there is some with radical faction, a small faction within the Islamic Muslim community, but it's quite small, but we're meant to fear everything.
Honestly, I think that whole narrative is so incredibly manufactured. As you know, I never believed it, you know, it's smelt absolutely of bullshit from day one, as far as I was concerned, you know. And I would argue that all of these things you're discussing, and I agree with you, the war on terror, the war on drugs being good examples, but there are many other examples as well. I feel like all of these now, when you look in the rearview mirror, they've all been steps in the march to where we are now.
And the other one too is the climate change agenda, which is, again, it's basically an attack on anybody who uses energy and anybody who switches on a light. You know what I mean? Who switches the light on and off. You know, you switch a light on and off. This is now a war on you, right? And then of course the COVID is really the piece de resistance, because it's a war on everybody. Okay, that's the government declaring war on everybody, because everybody's got to have the jab. Everybody's got to, you know, like beep beep beep. I mean, you know, as you said in another interview on Cafe Lockdown, you need the government's permission to buy bread. You know what I mean, with a QR code when you go into Coles or whatever.
It's worse than the Soviet Union. Worse than the Soviet Union.
I know, and people are still going around thinking, oh, this is normal. This is normal. I mean, it's incredible how many people have gone along with it. And then you have the petty kind of, I guess they're the people who would have enforced the rules in Soviet Russia at a micro level, and also in Nazi Germany, making sure no Jew got into a shop or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you know, oh, hang on a minute, you can't come into this shop.
Well, I would argue, I've said it before, but I think it's a really important point. You know, people look at the 20th century and they look at it as the century of demagogues or tyrants, you know, and they name the obvious candidates, you know, and say, oh, what a tyrant, what a demagogue, what a mass murderer. But I would argue that actually what the 20th century, one of the things the 20th century tells you, and tells you many things, but one of the things it tells you is that the biggest killer of people in our society is government. Government kills, because Joseph Stalin didn't go out and march 60 million people, you know, to the gulag and then shoot them and bury them in trenches, okay, or whatever revolting thing happened. Joseph didn't do that personally, okay. A bureaucracy did that. A government did that.
People at a micro level.
Mao, you know, same with Mao. You know, Chairman Mao didn't go around with, you know, with his revolver offing people. He didn't go around with, you know, his wheelbarrow of lime and his shovel and burying people in pits. It was a bureaucracy that did it.
Ordinary people, ordinary men and women did this, you know?
Yeah, and this is what we're seeing now. We're seeing a bureaucracy, a revoltingly corrupt and mindless bureaucracy enforcing these, and I agree with you, these anti-human dictates, because that's what they are. They're anti-human.
And the thing that shocks me is how many people are really going along with it, and they just jump right in, and they didn't give it any second thought. That they're saying to people, I mean, think about that. I mean, you know, the idea that you could say no to somebody. I mean, can you imagine if they were saying no to somebody based on the fact that their race or their religion or their gender or the fact that their gender, like sexuality, for example, they would be taken to the Anti-Discrimination Commission and they would win. You know what I mean? So it's extraordinary that just based on this one medical procedure, you can, discrimination is.
But it also shows you the absolute lie of all their narratives and all their arguments. You know, we've heard No, they've pretended to be against discrimination and to be in favor of marginal groups and whatever, but we know that this is a complete lie, because now they're discriminating against everybody. Now, I mean, they want to inflict the most terrible fate. They want to rob people of their right to work, their right to live, their right to socialize, their right to be human. They want to rob everybody of that. It doesn't matter what social group you're in, what subculture you're in, how you identify as this or that or whatever. They've revealed themselves as being against everybody.
Exactly. And the scary thing is, too, we should always remember, what is this supposedly about? It's about a kind of flu disease that 99.96% of people survive without a vaccine, right? Who are under the age of 65. So, I mean, the idea, like that it's for something so trivial. And the scary thing I think about now is that people are forgetting about that it was for COVID, but they're just getting into the totalitarianism of it all. You know what I mean? It's like the rules exist now. Like the fact that they don't make sense in a kind of 1984 kind of way. You know what I mean? That's the really terrifying thing.
Yeah, well, I've said it before, but that was my experience. When I've traveled in the countries of the former Soviet Union, and I've talked to a lot of people, Czech Republic, Poland, etc., places like that. Lovely people, fantastic people, traumatized people who have basically sort of lifelong PTSD, because they lived through this Soviet nightmare. And the reflections of what they said to me are so frightening to me now. It's like the chickens have really come home to roost here, because so many of these people that I spoke to in these former Soviet republics, they've said things that absolutely mirror what we're going through now. These ridiculous dictates that don't make any sense. They change from week to week. They make no logical sense. And you see people, this strata of people, this class of people who have no minds of their own. They're simply like a school of fish that are dictated to by the media. They'll bend over backwards. They'll do all sorts of bizarre calisthenics and gymnastics simply to continue to follow this absurd narrative and to signal their virtue at the same time.
I know, it really is quite extraordinary. I mean, there's a lot of other odd things I've noticed. Obviously, this big build that's going on. Daniel Andrews is like basically, this is the biggest infrastructure project I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it's about as big as the Roman Empire. I mean, he's rebuilding, like, what's it called, stations. He's lifting them in the air. I guess, I don't know why this is happening at the same time as COVID. I think it's got something to do with the fact that he's destroying the economy for small business, and that he's attempting, I think, to maybe bolster the economy by having to hire all these people to build.
I also think it's basic as well. It could be those things as well, but I also think it really smells of just distraction, political theatre to me. Actually,
absolutely. During all the
bread and circuses.
You're right. And during all the talk of this new bill, he would never talk about what's going on. But the fact that he was renegotiating it or anything, he just kept, appearing, and this is something that both communist and fascist dictators love to do. And he did it himself, Daniel Andrews. He would go to like the new tunnel and he'd be wandering around, kind of inspecting it and looking at it. You would see Kim Jong-un or Kim Jong-il doing that, and all that, everyone was applauding, you know what I mean? Like when Daniel Andrews, he'd be going, oh, yes.
I completely agree. It's extraordinary. It's so identical that it's kind of breathtaking. Like it's like they're just leafing through Totalitarian Playbook 101. Like here we are on page 12. Okay, the glorious leader should appear at pointless openings of bridges and cutting ribbons and smashing champagne bottles on boats. Okay, glorious leader, off you go. Cameras, roll.
And the other thing that's interesting too, I mean, if you noticed, they've been putting in like bike lanes everywhere, right? And if you look at a bike lane in the city, it's never got a bike in it. I mean, it might have some at peak hour, you might see the odd bike, but basically most of the day there is no bike in the bike lane, and except that road used to be maybe 3 lanes, is now 1, and the traffic is backed up like 3 kilometers, right? And so if they're really trying to be green, I mean, traffic is now being kept on the road longer. It doesn't make any sense. And it's what we said before about problem, wrong reaction. And then, you know what I mean? Like all these bike lanes everywhere. And have you noticed this?
Oh, look, I mean, everything they do is constructed to signal, and it's a lie. These people don't give a damn about the environment. I mean, come on. I don't believe that for a second. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
But
they certainly don't give a damn about people. I mean, they're anti-human.
There's some agenda where they don't want you to use your car so much, and they want to keep you. I mean, obviously, lockdown is a classic example where they just want you to keep in your neighborhood. And there's another interesting thing I've noticed too. They're taking like residential areas and they're building like play areas. They're closing off some streets and they're building some kind of play area in the middle of the street. I mean, it's not really that big a hassle. You just drive around it or whatever, because there's one near a friend of mine. But like, this is like, again, it's like you're going to stay local. You know what I mean? And there's all this kind of propaganda, you know, think local, think local. Basically, they're saying that because you're not allowed to go anywhere. You know what I mean? You might be able to walk to your local park.
Sure.
Or, you know
I mean, what it looks like, I mean, this looks like a bureaucracy out of control, and it is that, no doubt about it, you know. But also, these are all just the measures of control. These are all, I think, in my view, these are all just about acclimatizing people to unreasonable control. And that's the environment that we're in right now. You know, we are living in you know, we've woken up, you know, the alarm's gone off and we're all bleary-eyed and it's a little bit too early in the morning and we've woken up in a totalitarian state. And this is what totalitarian states do. They embark upon stupid, pointless projects, and they rub your nose in it. They put obstacles in your way every place they can because they want to control you and they want power.
You've seen this too. They'll put in like some kind of traffic island, and like all it does is slow traffic. It makes it harder to get on the train or tram. It doesn't make sense, and it clearly cost. I mean, it must have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you put together all this building, it must be billions and billions of dollars that Daniel Andrews is spending at the moment with his big bill.
And where's all this money coming from? Where's it coming from? The economy's at a standstill. They've deliberately, I would argue, they've
Whoop, he's gone. We said China and David vanished. So obviously there was the Belt and Road deal. I don't know if you pop back in, David, but like, you know, I mean, that got cancelled by the federal government, but was it cancelled? I mean, where's all the money coming from this big bill? I guess are the Victorian taxpayers now going to be lumped with this absolutely extravagant kind of off the charts kind of big bill that's going on? David, are you there? Oh my God, he's vanished. I think ASIO's had enough of David. Oh my God, it's just me. Maybe he's going to try and come back in. Maybe we'll get a video image. We'll try and keep going. I wanted to use this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to say, hang on, I banged the computer here, to support Cafe Lockdown. This show, here's David coming back. You know, if you can subscribe and donate to Cafe Lockdown. I know this show, Michael Gray Griffiths occasionally asks for that, and he asked me to ask. So if you're a supporter of this show, subscribe to it and donate some money if you can. Oh, he's gone again. So if David's not coming back, we'll maybe wrap it up. But we'll hope David does come back. What else can we talk about? Gee, I can't do the show on my own. I hope you love my T-shirt. We should sell these from the Cafe Lockdown Patreon site or something like that, but that obviously hasn't been set up. Hopefully, David will come back. Otherwise, maybe we'll wrap the show up for the evening. Let's give him a little bit longer. What was I asked? Well, some of the other points. I was going to hopefully speak to David about his opinions on the JFK assassination, because I got a few emails. We mentioned on the show a few weeks back that David had some very interesting thoughts on the JFK assassination, and he does. And I was going to maybe see if he could talk on those for 5 minutes, because I received about 2 emails from a couple of different people just saying, get David to talk about the JFK assassination, and I would like to do that. But I think maybe we have lost him for the evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I think that could bring the show to its conclusion this evening. I'd like to thank you. My name is Richard Wollstonecroft. I've got my own podcast at the Unshackled website called The Report for Tiger Mountain. You can check that out. There are about 150 videos I've made, me pontificating about everything, if you can stand that. And David Thrussell is, oh, here he is. He's back. Here he is. He's got a camera. Yay. Wow.
Well done.
Half hour now.
Chairman Dan's minions, you know, removed me from the Politburo, or something happened. Anyway, I was ejected from the party room, but now I've repented. I've repented my philosophical sins, and I've been allowed back in. Thank you, glorious leader.
Thank you, glorious leader. We should take this a moment of praise, and then we'll have the 5 minutes.
Oh, hail, glorious leader! I mean, look, honestly,
hail.
I think I can speak for both of us if I can. I just wanted to make it really plain that, I mean, we've said all this stuff, but, you know, this sort of anti-government, power stuff. But we're just kidding, really. I mean, we love the whole thing, and we're going to really try and behave ourselves now as best we can, because we have to.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's off to the gulag.
Yep, Mickleham. It's Mickleham for you, David. It's Mickleham, and we're going to have to put on a pantomime.
I'm hearing that there are more of these gulags around than what we realise. Actually,
there's one up in Northern Territory, and apparently some Aboriginal. Isn't this extraordinary? I mean, the left, the ABC, is literally applauding the fact that they're taking Aborigines to what essentially amounts to concentration camps. I mean, isn't that absolutely extraordinary?
Yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and the ABC, the Guardian, they're reporting it.
There's more of these places around. Apparently, I spoke to someone during the week who's in a camp in Lismore, in the Lismore showgrounds. There's a camp there which we publicly we haven't heard anything about. But I spoke to somebody who's in this camp in Lismore, in the showgrounds. Apparently, they're all in RVs that are all separated by cyclone wire, etc., etc., etc. So that begs the question, because I hadn't heard anything about camp in Lismore. So it begs the question, how many more of these camps are there around the place? And
they're everywhere. It's time to go camping, time to go camping.
Yeah, carry on camping.
I hope we I hope we have Commandant Klink and Schultz, I mean, with Starling, whatever it was on, Hogan's Heroes, because at least we might have.
I think that's the best result that we could possibly ask for, because my feeling is that when they say I know nothing, that's what that means. They'll be talking about where the key is to let us out.
I know
nothing.
I mean, there's a good meme on Facebook floating around of ScoMo, basically Schultz. I know nothing, I see nothing. I mean, because that's the kind of prime minister he's been during COVID. He hasn't done anything. He's apparently supposed to be a more slightly libertarian prime minister. And I know your opinion on this.
What's the strings on the puppet? Come on, the guy's clearly blackmailed. He's clearly blackmailed. I mean, do I have to point out how obvious it is?
No, absolutely, David. And look, I did actually receive a number of communications. And when you dropped out for a second, I spoke to the audience a little bit about that, just to kind of roll the time along. People wanted to hear your opinions on the JFK assassination. Have you got maybe a Cliff Notes version? Because I received a number of emails of, what your general thoughts are on some of that.
Look, it's a big topic. And honestly, I think it's an interesting one. We'll save it for another show sometime. It's
let's do a special show on the JFK thing some night, But,
it's related. I would argue that it's pivotal. It has pivotal connections to what we're going through now, because it's the same. It has the appearance of being the same sort of apparatus,
Yes.
And look, I'm very well read on the JFK assassination. I could quickly recommend what I think are some of the best books about it. Well, my favorite is actually one. It's a very hard one to find. I think you can find the PDF on the internet, but the actual physical book is very hard to find. It's called False Mystery. It's by a fellow who passed away, unfortunately, recently, called Vincent Salandria. He was an attorney in Philadelphia, I believe. His book, False Mystery. You can also see some lectures he gave under that title, False Mystery. It's an incredible book. Then there's James Douglas's JFK and the Unspeakable, which is also an incredible book. There's a few other books which I probably can't mention on the air because otherwise it's in a lot of trouble.
I don't have the goat ready, mate. I don't have the goat ready.
Yeah, that's right. But there are other books at the margins which I would highly recommend. As far as 9/11 goes, I'd highly recommend a guy called Christopher Berlin. Berlin, although I believe it's not spelled exactly the same, but you believe Berlin. Look up, find this guy called Christopher Berlin about 9/11. Very interesting fellow. Very interesting fellow.
Yeah, and so obviously you're somebody who doesn't believe the mainstream narrative on 9/11. I don't myself either. The interesting thing about JFK too,
he would believe that.
Who would believe it? But the thing about JFK to me is it seemed to be the first really overt action of the cabal, so to speak. I mean, the cabal had been there before, maybe started World War I and World War II, but definitely in the shadows. But with it really showed its teeth, so to speak. I think with JFK, and obviously
I agree. I think what's key about the JFK assassination. I mean, it was actually tragic. The times I've been to Dealey Plaza, I've felt an overwhelming sense of sorrow, but because of the road that has sent us on. You know, it feels, you can feel this malaise, this fog of sorrow around the place, you know. But
I think it was
also it's a key, and it's an obvious, and it's a deliberate, I would argue, psychological operation. It was designed in multiple layers, and apart from the fact that it was meant to remove a president who was a thorn in the side of powerful people.
It's been like JFK. I mean, he was not perfect. He was not perfect, obviously, not a perfect human being like Donald Trump.
He was a thorn in the side of certain people and certain groups of people, and they had to get rid of him. But also, it was also designed, I would argue, it was also designed to actually wound the public psychologically, like permanently, I would argue. You know, I think it was very successful in that.
Bob Dylan did a song recently. It was like a 20, 30-minute song. Did you hear that song? It was like,
Murder Most Foul, I think it was
Murder Most Foul. Wasn't that fantastic? Yeah. And also, too, I mean,
I thought it was a little bit courageous of him, and I thought it was very interesting. Yeah.
I thought that was Red Pill, definitely Red Pill. And tell us a little bit about, you've got a record label yourself, and you've released a few things to do with the JFK and various conspiracies. Tell us a bit about your label.
What we did, we released a record called The Ballad of JFK, which was all songs about the Kennedy assassination from that era, not contemporary songs, not songs from now, but songs from 1963 to 1969, and poems and spoken word pieces. It even had Lee Harvey Oswald's mother on there, Marguerite Oswald, on there, saying that she was certain that her son was an intelligence agent. That's straight from his mother's mouth. We had all sorts of interesting stuff on there. Look, it's a great record. It's called The Ballad of JFK. You know, I as you know, you know this, I have a secret passion for country music. So country music is well represented on that record. Lots of great songs about the Kennedy assassination. Very mournful songs, very, very heartfelt, distressed songs about the Kennedy assassination. Very sincere. And yeah, look, I have a great interest in that stuff. I mean, I've met people who knew Lee Oswald. I've met people who were at Love Field Airport when the Kennedys arrived in Dallas. I've been to the Texas Theater where Oswald was arrested. I've been to the site where Tippit was shot, etc., etc., etc. You know, I've met people who knew Jack Ruby. You know, there's a whole world of history there. It's very interesting being on the ground in Dallas and talking to the actual local people there, none of whom believe the official story. None of them believe it, you know. And I've met people who there who knew Ruby, knew Oswald, knew Officer Tippit, who was a policeman who was shot on the same day. You know, the locals have told me that Tippit actually moonlighted as a bouncer at one of Jack Ruby's clubs, not the famous Carousel Club, but another club. Anyway, my point is the people on the ground know it's bullshit.
Of course,
and their stories never appear in the press. It's really interesting. These stories. I mean, I've just found people just through meandering around the place and talking to various people and following up various leads. You know, all sorts of local people had all sorts of fascinating information that's never made it out into the press in any way.
It's a bit like people who have kind of what's it called adverse reactions to the vaccine. You never see them in the mainstream press. There's obviously always all the insane with 9/11.
Why?
No, it's
Are you suggesting there's some sort of agenda involved or something?
I hate to use the word, but there maybe is a conspiracy going on. I mean, it's scary to actually think of it. Really, it could be.
Perish the thought. Yeah.
You know? There could be. I hate to use the word. But...
Speaking of which, actually, I can see below someone's just made a very good point. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read excerpts, sections of Robert Kennedy Jr.'s new book.
What's that like? Dr. Fauci expose.
Yeah, look, it's fantastic, and I'm so impressed by his courage. There's a guy who knows. He knows the price of being courageous in public and what it can ultimately cost you, and he's still got the guts to get in there and give the fight. I'm so
impressed. See that documentary about RFK? I mean, obviously we go on about JFK a lot, but like Robert F. Kennedy was fantastic as well. He was assassinated, and like I was in tears watching that show. He just seemed like such a good guy. And, he was like the old leftist who would actually try and stand up for the working class and actually help people. And like that documentary.
I mean, they were what you would call, what people now would call privileged people. But,
they were.
There's a big but they were also people of conscience. They had access to money that we can't even imagine and social connections that we can't even imagine. But they wanted to use all that actually for the benefit of people, and that's a thing that is kind of essentially from our society, hasn't it? I mean, it's certainly vanished from the establishment left. I mean, the establishment left. I mean, open up the Guardian these days. Those people hate working people. They hate them with a passion.
I know. And that's why, I mean, I guess the new right has kind of come along, kind of the populist new right has come along and kind of like basically swept up the working and lower middle class and even middle class, because it seems like there's only the left-wing left-wing liberals and, of course, the elite themselves that push this agenda that we're talking about. Well, but if someone wanted to get that record, though, how do you get the Omni Recording Corporation product?
You can find it in record stores. That JFK record's called The Ballad of Jfk. We've done all sorts of funky, crazy records. As you know, I have to justify my ridiculous record collection somehow.
Yes, you do.
You've trampled over my record collection. It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
So I have to fashion some way to excuse my record collection. So that's how I do it. By curating and putting together these exotic releases of interesting material. Let's try
and reconnect what we're talking about with JFK back to where we are right now, because at the moment we're 1 hour and 5 minutes into this show, and let's go for another 5-10 minutes. We don't want to go too long, because this is the first David and Richard show of Cafe Lockdown. So David, let's reconnect.
You people, you're so lucky tonight.
I think they all miss Michael and Damo, to be honest. But anyway, they're stuck with us, and they can't do anything.
Charming fellows. It's a shame that we had to
do away with them.
It's a shame. I mean, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelette, so that's just the way it goes, isn't it?
It's the Stalin playbook, mate. It's the Stalin playbook, straight out.
That's right. Yeah. We were best mates until
it became convenient, and then they had to go.
Until we airbrushed both of them out of that, that classic photo of Stalin walking beside the canal or whatever. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We were best mates until they fell in the canal.
Circumstances changed. So, here we are. It seems that Daniel Andrews, all that protesting. I mean, I made that dark point one night. Is all these protesting going to stop it? Well, I hate to say it didn't stop it, but I think the tremendous energy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I'm not going to argue with you about that. All I would suggest is, we got to do something, and if we don't do anything, they'll steamroll us even more quickly.
Even worse.
I'll tell you, but there's an interesting point there to what you're saying, because, if there was 700,000 people, let's pick a number, on the streets of Melbourne last week saying they were absolutely opposed to this bill, as there was, where's the place in that for democracy? Because that's a freaking lot of people. That's a freaking lot of people to be on the streets and angry, So where's our pretend media institutions? I'm going to harp on them because I can't stand them, and I think they're absolutely derelict and corrupt, frankly. Where's the ABC and the Age and the Guardian, Channel 7, Channel 9, blah, 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 the Conversation, all these horrendous things? Where are they? Where are they when they pontificate about democracy, but yet there's 700,000 people on the streets of Melbourne saying no?
Yeah, and we raised that point before, David. We raised that point before that, like the Guardian and the ABC and, they always going on about, the marginalised and how we've got to help them and, we really must, help the underprivileged and the this and the that. And then,
what about those marginalised people who can't get into freaking shops now and who can't...
I know. Think about that.
Marginalised people.
I know. I mean, the unvaccinated can still go to Coles and like get their food. Apparently, that's it. But they're still going to use the QR code, right? But like, you know, they can't go to like an op shop just to buy a new pair of shoes, even the second-hand pair of shoes. I mean, this is really.
I'm going to say this again. I think demonstrating outside of the ABC is an excellent idea. Put the heat on them, okay? Because they're a bunch of liars, okay? They're an absolute bunch of liars, okay?
Michael would put the heat on them. Michael would have
Well, I don't think I'm saying anything that inflammatory. I mean, I'm talking about the wheels of democracy, public protest, the public protesting out the front of the ABC. This is not good enough.
Doing a cafe lockdown at the front of, you know, there will be most interesting, I think. You know, any final thoughts here, Dan?
Well, look, I guess we should just let people know what's happened is that we haven't, you know, we're tempted to say it, of course, for a bit of sparring fun, you know, but actually we're very fond of Michael. We're very fond of Damien. We haven't off them, you know, but they are currently indisposed in the machinations of protest, so they can't be here. So it's just been.
But they're going to be in Ballarat tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. So
that guy Richard and me, we've taken the reins tonight. But don't worry, Michael and Damien will be back. We would all miss them typically if they weren't. They've been such troopers. They've been such splendid fellows.
They deserve a night off. They deserve a night off. And
they probably deserve a night. I agree. They probably deserve a night off to unwind. And
let it be with apparently the Cossack, the Aussie Cossack, and Craig Kelly, and a few different people. Isn't that good? You know, meeting of the minds.
Oh my lord! You mean they've been behaving like human beings and interacting with people and stuff? Oh,
and the reason they can't say where they are.
Oh, that's illegal.
And the reason they can't say where they are is because they'd be bloody raided if it was known publicly that all these people were meeting at the moment and having a good time. But anyway, look, so tomorrow there's some kind of event happening in Ballarat, and I'm going to try and make myself. I think it starts around 2:30 tomorrow in Ballarat.
See you there.
David, you said you're going to come, so this is that's up your way. So I'm going to make the journey up from Melbourne. So it's been fantastic. I think it was a great event. What happened today, and there's something else happening in Ballarat tomorrow. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you this evening. And kind of
it's close to the anniversary of the Eureka Stockade, isn't it? You know, another anti-government insurrection. So obviously there's some.
It's the anniversary of the Eureka Stockade, so it's going to be very interesting to see. We're going to be back in the streets of Ballarat, like our ancestors were. Was it 150 years ago, approximately? So I think it's close. And you know, I said this before too. We are living in interesting times, and you know, I mean, we've lived in a kind of society that's kind of what you would say. Riddled with the kind of postmodern ennui, but we are presented here with a battle between good and evil, a battle between good and what is good and what is not. Yes. And you know,
this is our challenge. This is our challenge. We've been thrown a huge curveball. This curveball is monstrous. It's global. It's a global evil, and we've got to do everything we can to resist it. You know, and I mean, I think really the greatest motivator, and I've said this before, is this thing. You can tell this thing's evil because it wants to hurt children, you know, and anything that wants to hurt children is evil. You know, they are the life force. They are beauty personified. Anything that wants to hurt children is evil. Okay. And this thing wants to hurt children.
Did you see that? There was a news story that really, you know, today they announced that they're going to start, you know, injecting people 5 to 11 years of age. That came through. We all knew would happen, but that was announced today.
It's unthinkable. It's despicable. It's despicable. It's evil.
And that's where we are. So I think
they're giving themselves away. They've absolutely given themselves away. They want to inflict harm on children, and that means they're evil.
It certainly fucking does. So we're going to leave the show for this evening. I'd like to thank my co-host, David Thrussell. I'd like to thank Michael Gray-Griffiths, Richardson, who are off and no doubt having the time of their lives and plotting and talking. God knows what they're doing.
They deserve to unwind, those fellows. They've been doing a hard slog, so we send them our very best wishes.
We do. Logging off, and good night from, I'm Richard Wollstonecroft. I've been talking to David Thrussell, and support Cafe Lockdown. Get on and donate, because this show, I know Michael and Damo, need your support out there, and if you love this show, get up there and support it, and we'll see you all in Ballarat tomorrow. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I hope you've enjoyed this discussion. It's been slightly enlightening and and I'll shut up right now. So there it is.
Carry on. Thank you.
Good on you, Truster.